Hey y'all, welcome to Keeping It Real Estate with Kristen. I'm Kristen Goyette. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Motto Mortgage Complete, and this podcast is about all things real estate. And today we're going to talk about finances and budgeting with my friend, Heather Davis. Heather, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I know I couldn't say Heather with because you're your own person, your own business, but if you do want to check Heather out on Instagram, it's Cents, C-E-N-T-S with intent. Cents with intent.
That's right.
On Instagram, and then you can learn even more about finances and budgeting. But anyway, for today, hello and welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Tell us about yourself and your journey into becoming a financial coach.
Yes. So I am from the Greenville area, born and raised just outside of Greenville. And I'm married to Brian. Been married almost our 11-year anniversary is coming up in 2 weeks. And 2 little boys. Andrew just turned 9, Owen's 4. So in this current season, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So mommying keeps me super busy. But to back up, I'd really say my financial journey really started during college.
Okay.
Like, the first time I actually had a part-time job, making money on my own and just feeling like I was winging it. Like I really had no clue what I was doing. Felt like I was making pretty good decisions, but I always felt like I was like, am I doing the right thing? Like, could I be doing better? Right. But really just winging it. It wasn't really high on my priority until graduating college.
Right.
And then getting my first, big girl job. And then I still just always had that feeling like, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
And just constantly toying around with that and really going back to childhood, not being taught a lot about money. Most of us aren't.
That's right.
And I had
just talking about that on the way here.
Yes, we're not
taught. You and I had talked about that before, that so many of us grow up, unfortunately, not learning about finances and budgeting. Yeah. And I know when I was young, the only finance talk we ever had was, can we go to the store? Can I get a drink? And I can't afford, we don't have the money. And then with my kids growing up, it was, well, just swipe your card. If I would say, no, we don't need to buy that right now, well, just swipe your card. But so, like you were saying, so many of us do not grow up with that financial education from our parents. No pun on our parents.
No, I had wonderful parents. And I feel like, graduating college and having that first big girl job, that's the first time a lot of us are faced with that. We don't have, the parents in the home with us anymore, and we're the ones making all the financial decisions. Right. And so if you aren't taught, you're just doing what everyone else around you is doing, what you think is the right thing to do.
Right.
And you're just kind of on that course until other information comes along and you're like, oh, there's a better way to do this.
Absolutely.
And that was our case. Like I said, I was just winging it, doing my thing until now husband, but at that time boyfriend. And we were at church, and our church offered Ramsey's Financial Peace class, which probably a lot of listeners are familiar with. And he's like, hey, let's sign up for that. I think it sounds fun. And at that time, like I said, I thought I was doing, pretty good. Right. And I was like, honestly, several weeks of talking about money, that just sounds kind of boring. Like I was the one that didn't want to do it.
Right. That's interesting.
But he talked me into it. And so we went. I loved it. And I think it was mostly because that's the first time I had really had someone tell me like, hey, here's some right things to do, or here's what you could do. Yep. Since then, of course, I've learned and I've grown, and I know that we're not cookie cutters, and that approach doesn't always work for everybody.
That's right.
But I was so thankful just for that knowledge.
Absolutely.
And having somewhere to start and some steps to take.
Yes.
And it just surfaced so well.
You learned that information so young, because my husband and I completed Financial Peace University on our own. It wasn't, I'm not even sure how we learned about it, but we signed up online and we did the classes, however many weeks it was. But we were in our 30s before we learned that information. And, hindsight's always 20/20, and you always wish you knew that information a lot sooner. But it is good information. So when people come to you as a financial coach now, what's some advice that you offer, like initially? What kind of conversations are y'all having?
You know what? I literally just did a post on Instagram about this. I think it was like a couple of days ago. But I tell almost all of my clients, don't beat yourself up for what you didn't know.
Right.
I have so many that come to me, and like you said, whether it's, oh man, I wish I would have known this, when I first graduated, or just feeling so overwhelmed. And honestly, there's a lot of shame when it comes to not handling your money well, especially with debt. And I just always tell them, literally, don't beat yourself up for what you did not know.
Absolutely.
Just be thankful now you're in a place where you're learning, better, so you can go and do better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, that's really, really good. I love that because there is a lot of shame and just you don't want people in your financial underwear drawers, kind of what we say in the mortgage world. When it feels like that, when people are getting in your finances, they're really looking at, super personal. But with all the information and technology and access to information that we have in 2023, why would someone need a financial coach?
Oh my goodness. You could go right now and Google, budgeting or personal finance, whatever. You're going to have thousands, if not millions, of articles pop up. So there's definitely no shortage of information, but it's not about the information. Like if it was about the information, you could just go read one of those budgeting articles and you could be set. Like, cool, thanks for this wonderful article that just changed my life.
A better place, right?
Yeah. And what my clients often find out, matter of fact, the sweetest compliment I can recall from one client was, we were on the phone together, and she said, this financial coaching is way more than I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, bingo, because it's so much more than numbers. If it was numbers, you just had to know basic math and you'd have it all figured out. And it's so much more than that. Having a coach provides that ongoing support, accountability,
right,
to make those changes. Change is hard.
Absolutely.
It is super hard to make changes. And so having someone to walk alongside you and say, hey, this is what you said you wanted to do. This is your goal. Hey, I'm gonna be right there holding your hand and helping you till you meet it.
Kind of like exercise.
Yeah.
We all know that we need to eat right, and we know at least basic movements that we could do to improve our posture or strength or stamina, but we don't do it.
Yeah.
But people are probably way more successful when they have a personal trainer.
Yes, I love that analogy. It's so similar. We do kind of all have the basic knowledge of finances.
Right. Don't spend more than you make.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I think deep down, most of us know that, but it's like, why aren't we doing it? It's because it's not about that knowledge. It's so much more. It's our behavior with money.
Right. Absolutely. And a lot of our childhood and whatever's happened to us in our life affects that. So,
For sure.
What is your tactic? I'm sure it's individualized, but what are some things that you do to help folks stay on a budget?
Yes. The number one thing is make it personal. There's no budget template I can give every client and say, hey, here's your budget. Go live this way. Go do this.
Right.
And I kind of joke because I tell clients that early on, if I gave you our budget and just even 1 or 2 weeks of you living into our eating out budget, you probably would resent me and resent your budget. And I say that because we just aren't big go out to eaters.
Right.
I mean, we love to cook and eat at home with the boys and that kind of thing.
Right.
So for us, that area of our budget is lower so that we can make something else higher. So that's number one, is personal, I tell them. And then it's got to be intentional. We don't wait until the end of the month and then sit down and look back and add up all the receipts or whatever you're doing and figure out where your money went.
Right.
Like that's backwards. So I tell people it's got to be on the front end, you actually planning, hey, what am I going to do with this paycheck for the next 2 weeks or next month, however you're paid?
Right.
And then it's got to be flexible. People kind of think this budgeting is so time consuming. It's going to just take hours and hours of my time. It actually doesn't. What I always tell clients, give it a few months.
Right.
I truly think for most people, it takes about 90 days to really get in the swing of it. And then after that, it's like you have this, think of it like a flexible framework.
Right.
And then all you're doing is little minor tweaks every month after that, as things come up. Oh, I need to add a little bit to my gift line, that kind of thing.
Right. Yep. And so because we've done financial university a long time ago, I can remember falling off the tracks and getting back on. It's kind of like anything in life. You just need practice to make it perfect. But so how do you keep people motivated when they're feeling a little discouraged? Like when they come back to you and they're like, oh, she's going to be upset with me today. I made a mistake.
And that's the cool thing about coaching, because we are literally walking through life together. And there's going to be a lot of life changes that go on, new jobs or this and that, moving.
Right.
Life happens as you're going along trying to make these changes, which makes it even harder.
Right.
And so I am there to kind of bring them back constantly. Like, why are we doing this? What is your goal? And I always tell them, it's like, you're not completely off track. If you're completely off track, you wouldn't have met with me in like 2 months. I'm like, you're still showing up. You're still meeting with me week to week. Like, we're getting this thing done. We're moving forward. small steps.
Right.
Because even those small steps, you end up making big progress.
Right. And so I know a lot of people probably come to you, I'm assuming, because they want to get out of debt or lower their debt or whatever. So what kind of advice can we give to our listeners today about getting out of debt?
Yes.
Besides the B word, the budget word.
Yes, that is a big one. And you know what? That B word, though, I'm telling you, it gets a bad rap, but it literally is the starting point.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of people, it's just they don't truly understand what budgeting really entails. And I truly make it personal, and we tweak it for that person. But you got to start there. You've got to know what you're working with,
right?
So when it comes to debt, I always tell people, start with, why do you want to get out of debt?
Right.
I think most people come to me and they think that paying off debt is their goal. Like, I just really, I'm sick of this debt. They'll tell me, I'm sick of this credit card debt. I'm like, that's not actually your goal. There's really something else you want, and the debt is keeping you from it.
Right.
So helping them identify, like, what do you really want? Like, what's on the other side of that debt payoff? And if we can get you focused on that and super passionate about that, you will stay motivated. Because as you start to see that debt decrease and decrease, I mean, it's just like the most amazing feeling. Right. I mean, I'm over here like, I'm a mom, of course, of little kids, but seriously, I get so excited when a client tells me they've just paid off this other debt. It doesn't matter how big or small. I'm just like cheering them on and so ecstatic.
Yep.
And just keeping at it. Like, once you see it start to fall off, you want to keep going.
Right.
Because you want to get that thing, that why. Like, why am I doing this? I want to get that thing.
So do you help people set up some kind of a reward system or any kind of motivation that keeps them going besides their paid in full invoice?
Yes. Because for a lot of people, it can feel like this huge mountain to climb.
Right.
And, I have a client, we just had that discussion. I'm like, you need to plan a special date with your husband or, have this little reward built in. And don't go telling my secrets, but I actually sent them a gift card. When they had paid off. It was a big milestone for them.
Right.
And I sent them a sweet letter in the mail and a little gift card. I said, go have dinner on me.
Right.
So I know they're trying to pay off debt. They're like frugal and not trying to eat out as much. I'm like, here, go.
Oh, that's super sweet. So it sounds like your line of business is a lot like ours, us realtors and LOs, relationship building. Yeah. Like you said, making everything personal and
for sure
tailored to their circumstances and their lifestyle and what they've got going on. Yeah. So that's super good information. So if we've got any first-time home buyers watching today, what kind of advice does the financial coach have for them?
Oh, my goodness. The first thing for sure is consider the true cost. And this is a tip for just debt in general. I feel like a lot of people go into debt because they are looking at the monthly payment, whether it's a new car, in this case, of course, a new home. They're just fixated on that monthly payment. Like, can I make that monthly payment work?
Right.
And as we know, most of them aren't budgeting. So how they really know it can work is beyond me. But anyways, we assume, like, hey, that monthly payment sounds doable.
Right.
I can swing that. I can make it work. And they just don't take into account all these other expenses. There's going to be repairs as you're going along. When you first move in, you're going to want to update something.
Right.
Even if it's just a new rug. I mean, you're going to want something new. That takes money. Maybe there's moving costs. There's all kinds of things they don't think about. And having emergency money, like a fund, savings set aside. So when things do happen, you're prepared. If not, what often happens is they turn to the credit card.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the debt occurs for most people, is when they become homeowners.
Right. And I think when you first start budgeting, you have all your little categories. And then when you really start plugging it in, like you said, and I think it does take 90 days to even 4 months, 3 to 4 months, because all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't have a category for that. Hold on, now I got to go back to the drawing board. And like you said, I think people, and I've talked about this on several episodes, where when I give out a pre-approval and I go ahead and try to tell them approximately what their monthly payment's going to be, but then I say, now I don't know how many times you go out to eat.
Right.
All those little things that we don't think about because they're not payments, like you're saying, your grocery bill, your cell phone bill, which that is a payment, but maybe it fluctuates for some people, I don't know. But I just try to encourage them to think about all their expenses, because I don't want to see someone strapped. I know what that feels like. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And so just encouraging them, like you just said, think about every category of your spending, and does this payment really fit into that?
Yeah. And it's exciting, right? It's super exciting to buy a new home and start that new chapter of your life. But you want it to be a blessing.
Yes, very much so. All right, you've given us a lot of good information today. So if you were not a financial coach, what would you be doing?
You know what? I truly feel like I would still be doing what I'm doing, which is stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And even if I wasn't, sitting in front of a coaching client on a regular basis, I still would be somewhere talking to somebody about money because it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, you're just passionate about it.
Even in my old career, before I even knew what a coach was, I would sit down during my lunch hour and talk money with my buddy in the office.
Okay, cool.
Just all the time. So I just love it.
So you know you're calling then, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, tell us something fun or interesting about yourself before we wrap it up today.
So right before I left, I just could not really think of something. I was like, honey, I don't know. I don't feel like I have a ton of interesting things to say. Like, what do you think I should talk about? And of course, my 9-year-old's chiming in, and he wanted me to share a certain kind of embarrassing story. But my husband's like, I don't know. What about travel? I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I truly love to travel. And in this season of life with 2 little ones, it looks a lot different than it did in years past. But just even back in college is really where that kind of started. Having an opportunity to go on some mission trips with the campus ministry group.
Nice.
And go out of the country and some local. Just loved it. And we saved up for our first anniversary to go to Switzerland.
Nice.
Which we had taken like a low-key, kind of small, shorter honeymoon because that's what we really wanted to do was go to Switzerland. Couldn't swing it that first year. We're like, you know what? We are going to save up. We are going to go for our anniversary. And it was awesome. Just so many memories just popping in my head.
And you were able to come home from your vacation to no credit card expenses and crazy extra expenses that most of us come home to after a vacation because you saved up first.
I am convinced a vacation is way more fun and just so much more relaxing when you come back and the bills don't follow you home.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your wealth of knowledge about finances and budgeting. If anyone watching today wants to reach out to you for your services, how can they contact you?
Yeah, so you can send me a message on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook at Sense with Intent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can also email me at heather@sensewithintent.com.
Awesome. And if you have any other questions and you're nervous to reach out to Heather, please contact me first. I can guide you into working with her as well. I'm Kristen Goyette, 252-560-8632. Thank you so much for tuning in and keep those budgets tight.